about 200 million people. That means that there's so much work to be done in different spheres of influence. And we again say that our prayers and love with his family, the government, and the good people of Benue State. All right. We'll take a quick break at this point, everyone. When we return, we'll look at headlines from the national newspapers for you. Do stay with us.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Global Morning on Global Television, and it's the newspaper review segment. And we'll start with the first paper of the day. It's the Punch newspaper, giving us some very punchy headlines, according to Mr. Uyi. All right, above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, it says flood crisis. FG predicts more devastation in 15 states, and that read you will find on page 7. Now, India buys Nigerian crude as Dangote imports U.S. oil, and that's on page 20. Now, here it says, beside the nameplate, it says, Doing Abiola, media gurus reflect on democracy, soldiers' life, and that's on page 3. And the Star story read, states hit by 68% spike in foreign debt payments. And the writer says debt servicing threatens states' fiscal stability, and that's from NEITI. Lagos, Rivers, others spend 235 billion naira in 6 months. Now, that's a lot. Now, there's a picture story there of EFCC arrests 93 suspects for internet fraud in Ogun. Now, what would you say is the cause of that? Unemployment, idleness? What do you think will be the cause of that?
Juma, I think we should stop looking for too many excuses. I think we should stop looking for excuses. Too many of them.
Too many, I understand.
Of course, the numbers don't look good when it comes to unemployment.
93 is a lot.
Right? And add to that the fact that we are told over half of the graduates that we churn out every graduation cycle are unemployable, which also means that even if you had the opportunities, their chances
you don't have what it
getting
takes.
that job very slim. All right, so it's a very complicated
situation.
But you know what they say? They say desperate times require desperate measures. So that can go both ways, negative or positive, right or wrong, bad or good. So long and short of the story is there are role models in society we can always follow. Some of them very dark, some of you have other ones who are inspiring. For every young person, male or female, who is into fraud or what we now popularly refer to as hookup, for example, you realize, yes, you realize that there is another young person who is innovating in tech, all right, in education, in health, in agriculture, in media, and everything else. Look at content creation, for example. We know there are people who have created content to embarrass the nation, embarrass their own family, embarrass society. But we also know that there are those who are creating content for the right reasons, spotlighting issues that affect all of us. And they are doing that from the standpoint of drawing awareness, whether from government or private entities.
Human angle.
Yes, to ensure that these issues are discussed and the right conversations are put in front of us. They are not only doing that to get traction that benefits us in the end, they are also making money while doing that. They call it monetization.
Sure.
So it just simply means that the options are in front of young people. Yes, the times are tough. These are tough times. In fact, one political philosopher many years ago said these are times that test men's soul. All right, which means these are difficult times. In fact, we've seen how that in real time, young people can be between the rock and the hard place. But the question is, what examples are we following at those critical moments. Of course, we're not all wired the same way. There's
No,
just
we're
so
not.
much some people can deal with. Not
Or
everybody
take.
has that tenacity, that resilience to continue to push when the odds are stacked up against them. But it also means that government must at this point sit back and realize that beyond prosecution, beyond using the EFCC, the ICPC and other anti-graft agencies, all right, law enforcement to pursue these young people, we must also ask, why doing that? Why not neglecting that role? Have we done our bit? Have we played our role effectively? Have we done our part well enough? It's very important. Start from education, for example. Of course, like you have it everywhere in the world, Jumai, not everybody must acquire formal education. Not everybody must sit in front of cameras like this every other weekday in the morning. Not everybody must have a white-collar job. For those who have decided that their path is skill, their path is vocational study or learning, what are we doing for them? What have we done with all the colleges of education in this country, whether state-owned or federal? Let's not talk about universities for a second. What have we done with those vocational schools from back in the day that some of our parents attended and they became the light of society? So we must have the humility, we must have the sincerity of purpose to sit down and ask the right questions. Finally, they say there's no smoke without fire. So when you see a society where young people are proudly, openly taken to fraud or Yahoo, which is internet fraud, as it's not around here, then it means that we are not doing enough of sitting down to ask the very critical questions.
I like what you said. Well put together. And then I like the fact that you said with all of this, what next? What is the way forward? It's very important that we have to seek the way forward. It's not about arraigning individuals 93. The numbers will still come. There's someone who is making up his or her mind right now that is the fastest way to out of poverty or out of employment. So it's better they go into such acts of fraud to defraud others. But like you mentioned, the government must sit down. I know we must not leave everything for government, but at the same time, those who are responsible under this umbrella must realize that what is the way forward out of all of this arrest, arraignment? What can we do to engage these youths? Very important. All right, now still on the Punch newspaper. Now below the foot of the Punch here, it says FG launches e-fiscal platform to crack down on tax evasion, and you will find that very interesting read on page 19. Next it says another UK-based Nigerian jailed 5 years for rape, and you will find that read on page 4 and 5. And here it says River LG poll umpire under fire amidst ADC APC attacks. And you will find that read on page 8. Please go out and get yourself a copy of the Punch newspaper for all of these very interesting read on the Punch. And next we have the Vanguard. Over to you.
All right, let's quickly run through it. Just above the nameplate of the Vanguard, tariff slash EERC moves to resolve Enugu power outage. That's talking about Enugu Electricity Regulatory Commission. Top right corner of it, the kicker says looming strike, FG to pay 7 months arrears of doctors, health workers. That's the federal government there, promising that by end of this month, which is August, all of these 7 month arrears for doctors and all the other health workers would have been paid. That sounds quite promising. Obasanjo Library kicks as Economic and Financial Crimes Commission raids hotel. Peter Obi has integrity. He will keep his one-term promise. That's according to Bell's forum. There, that's MBF. Okay, you can read it up on page 6. Page 8 is where you have those details about Peter Obi and keeping his one-term promise according to the Middle Belt Forum. All right, so let's see what the Star headline tells us here. Sugar importation rises as local production falters. The headline has one rider with it. Sugarcane farmers lament neglects access to sugar refiners. And then you have a picture here, picture story as they call it. But then we jump right over that to move to other headlines for you. Federal government's fresh warning, states mobilized against flooding. We understand, for example, between today and Wednesday, that's a 3-day period, there's going to be a lot of flooding across several states. 2027, Niger Delta will support only Tinubu or Tuaro. Tax Reforms Act will cripple our operations in 48 hours. AON. Those details are on page 9 of today's issue of the Vanguard newspaper. All right, hopefully you get a copy and read up those details for yourself as we flip things over to the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, now on the Daily Trust newspaper, below the nameplate, it says Israel's Gaza seizure plan another calamity, and that's from the United Nations. Next, it says options for banks recapitalization pressure mounts, and that you will find on page 23. Hoodlums attack truck driver, burn vehicle in Imo, and you wonder what must have been the cause of that, and that you will find on page 6. Now the Star story reads: residents flee Kwara villages over attack, and the writer says FG deploys fighter jets to chase away terrorists. And there's a picture story down, of course, the protest that is ongoing at Israel by Palestinians, right? And then below that it says presidency dispels Tinubu's illness rumor, and that you will find on page 6. And on the fit of that it says Obasanjo Library threatens EFCC with lawsuits over raid on facility, and that is on page 45. Now, on page 38 of the Daily Trust, it says Syrup NGE sue Niger governor, NBC over Bagigi FM. Well, of course, we know what has played out. A lot of individuals have said that it was unlawful for the governor to actually close up this FM. You have the necessary body in which you can report matters to, and they will take the necessary action. You as an individual, even being a governor, has no right to seal up an FM station
or a TV station
or a TV station, really. But we'll get to the root of this particular matter. Hopefully the needful is done, and justice will take its course. The law will take its course. Very important. And it says three others die in Castina Road accident, and you will find that read on page 5 of the Daily Trust. A lot of interesting read there. You have to go get yourself a copy and be well abreast. And next is the Nation newspaper.
All right, so let's do the big headline from the Nation first. Here says why Niger Delta region will back Tinubu in 2027 by Otwaro. Saying all of that on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. EFCC OBJ Library lock horns over arrest of 93 fraud suspects. Anti-graft agency acted on credible intelligence. It was invasion of OOPL premises. All right. Well, that's debate is ongoing. But let's move things up real quick. Above the nameplate, top left corner, picture of the former governor of Ekiti State. Here. Talking about Fayemi, it says, I remain APC member in Ekiti as governor for Oyebanji. All right. FIRS's e-invoicing system hits 5 trillion naira in early surge. The writer tells us 20% of firms join in 2 weeks. Family fixes September 9 to 12 for Doyin Abiola's funeral. Ogbe died peacefully in his sleep, says family member. What a way to end it all. All right. What's more, it says opposition tackles governor over deputy's 7-month sick leave. Well, was it the governor that made him sick? You can find details when you pick up a copy of the Nation newspaper today. However, there is a writer choice. It says why we can't act by House of Assembly. Then we'll take it further down a little for you. Left corner of the front page still. 176 illegal estates. What government's action has cost us by developers. 176 illegal estates. What government's action has cost us by developers. Residents, investors, panic. Of course, nobody needs telling us that billions must have gone into those projects, and our government says they are illegal. Finally, on the foot of the front page, wanted church leader arrested in Lagos for cross-border drug trafficking. Those very curious details are on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. All right, read details for yourself when you grab a copy. Let's move things up to the Guardian newspaper now.
All right, now the Guardian newspaper. Now below the nameplate of the Guardian newspaper, it says Abiodun Daniel Baker over demolition notices on property. And next it says, new constitution, Senate welcomes recommendations at public hearing. And that you will find on page 3. Now on page 6, no, pardon me, on page 4, it's, and that's a picture of Atiku Abubakar and Femi Falana. They kick as NYSC defends withheld certificates. And we'll see how far that will go. Now from Broad Street to Atlantic City, and that's the star story on The Guardian, and it's on page 6. Congestion, asset depreciation push HNI's businesses to Eco Atlantic City. And it says U.S. condemns killing of Christians in Nigeria, vows decisive action. And you will find that read on page 3. Now, 300 private developers corporations top list of allottees. Eco Atlantic City ranks as third priciest neighborhood after Old Ikoyi Banana Island. And these are places that we should look at critically because there are lots of flood that happens in those areas. So let's be sure how investments are being put in there. A plot of land in Eco Atlantic, which was valued at around 180 million naira in the early 2000s, has now skyrocketed over 2 billion naira, highlighting the rapid appreciation of high-end coastal real estate in Nigeria. Lagos housing market report by RIRFHUD. So we should take a look at that. And of course, we know that a lot of individuals hide under the guise of real estate and become drug barons. So I think I think the FCC, they're in the right step, in the right direction. But it's important that we investigate all of this to reduce the crime and menace of ills in our society. Now it says landmark vaccine trial raises hope for cancer patients. And that read you will find on page 4. Now EFCC raids hotel in Obasanjo Library management. Management threatens lawsuit. And that read you will find on page 4. Crack widen in ADC coalition as Shekarau Alliance consider new platform. Okay, so what's going on in the ADC, the coalition? So with this new alliance now, is there now
quite
a problem in paradise?
Yes. Well, there are speculations that former President Goodluck Jonathan is likely going to test the waters, as they say.
Really?
Some people say, well, it's just a few political, if you like, waka-abouts, as one person once referred to them. All right, who are throwing the kite to see where it turns, all right, how it goes and all of that. But then they said OB is also a big brand in the market of politics, if you know what I mean, for the ADC.
Yes.
And then the interesting thing is, well, let's just call them political analysts and commentators who are now saying that if OB and former President Jonathan are going to have to, as it were, slug it out on the platform of the ADC, where does that leave former Vice President Atiku Abubakar?
Exactly.
And then over this weekend, for a part of the week there was also the rumor that he's likely going to head in the direction of the SDP, the Social Democratic Party, where, of course, about 3 decades ago, he had also fought to clinch that ticket, which eventually landed in the hand of late MKO Abiola, who became the winner of the very controversial election in 1993. So it's still an unfolding development. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and watch.
Let's keep our fingers crossed and let's watch. And of course, Global Television will bring you the news, keeping you abreast with the issues of the ADC. Everyone is wondering. I was speaking over the weekend with an individual, and I said, ADC, they are gradually becoming a threat, and I didn't know they're not. They're just his own opinion said they're just noisemakers, just trying to know. I said, but these are heavyweights. He says, really? Are you sure?
Politicians know how to get around this.
Exactly.
I don't know about in other places across the world, but in Nigeria, it will appear the most confident, the most, if you like, faith-driven set of individuals are politicians. All right. Even when a politician is seen to be losing, he says, "Look, we own this state. We're winning this election. We are cruising home to victory." I love when they say that. Right. But by the time INEC announces the results, but again, 2027 is going to be interesting for all the parties involved, for the APC, for the PDP, APGA, the Labour Party. Of course, the Labour Party, like most of the other parties, has its own internal issues they are dealing with. The coalition has a lot of wrangling also going on.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I mean, it's about the power ultimately, Jumai. So it's not just going to be an easy ride for anybody. Look at the ADC for a second.
And I think, just to interject, I think even for the APC, it's not going to be an easy ride for all of these parties, because everyone is going neck in all of this. But I just hope that, for me, as a Nigerian, as an individual who loves Nigeria, I just pray that the needful is done and the right person that God has ordained. For me, it doesn't matter whether you're in SDP, APC, PDP, LP. I think most Nigerians, for some, not all, they have their preference. But for some of us, let the right person that will rule, and there will be a balance when it comes to you and I. There is healthcare, basic amenities are there. We're all moving forward. I think that's it for most Nigerians.
Very interesting. But then we need the election to determine who that person will be.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we cannot go knocking on your doors to see, are you the right person? There has to be an election.
Of course.
But then you look at the ADC as of today for a second, you see that there are former governors there. And we know how powerful governors can be in this country, even when they have left office. All right? Look at Arigbo Shola, for example, former governor of Osun State, two-term governor, who later became, of course, Minister of Interior for virtually 8 years under late former President Muhammadu Buhari. Look at Malam Nasir El-Rufai. He had been the BPDG at the point, he had been FCT Minister at the point, became two-term governor as well.
Of course, yes.
Influential member as he then was of the APC. In fact, just this weekend again, a stalwart of the APC says, look, El-Rufai is still a member of the All Progressives Congress.
Are you kidding me?
That's interesting for a man who has formally resigned his membership. But you see, these politicians know how to turn the circles, how to do 180 degrees on members of the public, and the next thing you know is they are dining and they are whining together again. As 2027 inches closer, on the final note, we're going to see alignments and realignment, and you and I will be here to talk about it.
Exactly, by the grace of God. And we see how far this plays out, but it's very controversial.
Right,
this is very controversial with individuals who have been loyal to their party, coaliting with, emerging in this coalition. It's surprising to see, but I know someone, she says that it's not surprising to her to see some governors leaving their party to go to this to be part of this coalition. But let's just see how it plays out, just like we said. And for some, they say this ADC is a joke, but let's just see how far this plays out. All right, now let's quickly delve into the next paper, which is the New Telegraph. Over to you.
All right, big story comes first here. It says, condemned prisoners, lawyers splits over call for judges to sign death warrants. As governors refuse to sign execution orders. That's been here for quite a while. One of these days, real soon, it will be a topical discussion on scale of justice. All right?
It should
but let's look at other headlines for you now. Here it says, Obasanjo Library condemns CFCC's night invasion, threatens legal action. All right? Then what's more here? I can't walk away from party I helped to form, ex-SGF. Mustafa there is the one talking. Edo PDP slams Okpebholo for spending 3.5 billion naira, 3.51 billion naira on traveling in 6 months. Those details are on page 9. There, bit of opposition politics. Federal government begins e-invoicing, electronic fiscal system for large taxpayers. Above that, at the very top of the page this morning, the kicker says loans, 149.2 billion naira deducted from highest indebted states allocations in 2024. Rider tells us Kaduna, Ogun, Bauchi, Cross River listed. And then bring it further down to the right-hand corner, I should say here. Netanyahu defense planned military offensive in Gaza. Protesters hit Israeli streets. Global TV brought you that story yesterday. Defections to APC will not guarantee Tinubu's victory in 2027. Akinwumi, defections to APC will not guarantee Tinubu's victory in 2026. Those interesting details await you on pages 10 and 11. Flood, 140,228 affected, 49,205 displaced in 21 states. That's according to NEMA. Two riders are there for you to also look up for perspective and context. Capital flights, Nigeria losing multi-billion naira to lack of technology transfer. That position is credited to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Then lastly, youngsters face heart risks from excessive screen time. Again, that's according to a study. Excessive screen time here, the study says it puts young people at the risk of heart-related problems.
My goodness.
Find out those details on page 26. Apart from, I mean, we're not here talking as medical experts. But apart from this new study linking heart risks with screen time, you also realize that it has very adverse impact on your visual, I mean, your sight, all right? Especially for those of us who won't go to bed until we scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, excuse me, our phones. They call it endless scrolling. Some people call it mindless scrolling. It's more of an addiction.
It is.
I've had to practically fight somebody for over 1 calendar year over this, but I realize that it's a bit of a systemic problem. So the method has to be a bit unconventional, but sure, as they say, that's a conversation for another time.
It is, and of course, I think parents and guardians need to do better when it comes to screen time and their children. There are some kids that can spend 7 hours, if not more, on their phones.
And they're not done.
And they're not done. And if they can put all that energy reading when it comes to their books and, you know, doing other things like football, you know, other curricular activities, it will go a long way. I think we need to do better so that it will not become an addiction like you mentioned, because it is a societal ill, but we can actually, if not eradicate it, but at least we can nip it in the bud a bit. It will go
Bring
a
it
long
to the
way.
barest.
Exactly, very important.
All right, that's what we'll wrap it up with the New Telegraph. Nigerian Tribune is our next port of call.
All right, the Nigerian Tribune, and above the nameplate it says, banditry, police deploy squad to Kwara community. And that read you will find on page 4. Now on page 22 it says 2027 PDP may unveil zoning formula August 25th. And the writer says DRI's ad hoc committee to meet this week. Now below the nameplate, which is the star story, it says Senate factors to consider before approving new states. And the writer says 61 requests received. And that is on page 23. Now still on page 23, it says Serap NGE sue Niger governor NBC over Bagigi's Badigi FM.
That's a bit tricky to pronounce.
It's very tricky to pronounce what is Badigi FM. All right, so it says 2027 Niger Delta will support only Tinubu, and it says Pap Boss, and that's on page 4. And now it says strike health workers to get 7 months salary arrears by August end, and that's from the federal government on page 4. And I think for this, like I've always mentioned on Global Morning, all sectors are important, but there are some that actually add much more value than others.
Critical ones.
Exactly. When it comes to health, when it comes to education, when it comes to transportation, all of these are very peculiar compared to
public
other
infrastructure.
Exactly, compared to others. And I think for me, this is a step in the right direction when it comes to health workers, because there are so many of our doctors, of our nurses, midwives who have actually, quote and unquote, in the Pigeon Palace Japa. So these ones who have decided to stay, to keep abreast when it comes to health issues, to help out when it comes to attending to individuals, you and I in the society, I think this should just be a tip of what government can do for them, because compared to their colleagues who are abroad, who they say, oh my goodness, is this what we're supposed to earn as doctors? So please, I think the needful should always be done when it comes to these particular sectors, because it's very sensitive, really, because if all doctors and nurses decide to leave Nigeria, it's a serious problem.
That's right.
All right, now let us move, and it says health again, and that you will find on page 4. It says exercise can help fight breast cancer. and that's from a health specialist. They're saying, so women try as much as possible to, there's some important exercise you can do above, up from your stomach upwards. It's very important, so you can, because it's very important to avoid cancer, as it's very important just to avoid it. And here it says, Obasanjo Library condemns invasion of hotel by EFCC, and that's on page 3, considers illegal option. Release LG funds, Osun governor tells federal government again. So we're still going back and forth when it comes to this, and it's on page 24. And it's very important that we understand that the local government, if you go to places like Lagos, and if you check all of these places, the local governments around, they are doing so much because they have the funds to actually come out and exercise these projects. And you'll be shocked what a local government chairman can do once he has the available resources allocated to him. So we keep going back and forth in some places where, in some states, some of the local government chairman, they are not given their funds to execute allocations, projects, infrastructure in that local level. And it's unfortunate because individuals who are there are the ones going through all of this, and I don't think it's fair. So I think the needful should be done. And of course, there will be transparency, accountability. We shouldn't go back and forth on this. The judge has given his verdict. President our president has given the final say, and he has talked about it, and I don't know why we're still going back and forth with this. But I don't think this is going away anytime soon, because there are some governors who will still hold on and press on to the funds allocated to local government because they feel it's their entitlement, they feel it's their right, but it is not.
That's the reason we need to be a rules-conscious society.
Very important.
So we understand that the governors are not above the law. And the president himself is not above the law. As a matter of fact, their offices and even the elections that produced them are products of the law. All right. So if that's what it is, it means to that extent they must all be subject to the ground norm, which is the Nigerian Constitution.
Exactly. And lastly, on the foot of the Nigerian Tribune, it says 500 billion naira capitalization. Banks set up capital drive as CBN tightens grip on recap to power $1 trillion economic goal. And if you are curious about that, you have to flip over to page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune to be well abreast with all of these major headlines making round. And next we have the Nigerian News Direct. Over to you now, Uyi.
All right, star headline first here for you. It says FG commits to clear 7 months arrears for doctors, health workers by August end. That's quite amazing. All right. Minister Party affirms government's determination to address systemic challenges. Union leaders express cautious optimism. Fashola calls for radical reform of Nigeria's football industry to unlock economic gains. Then we turn to the right corner of the front page of the Nigerian News Direct today. President Tinubu, the North, and distortions of politics. I remain loyal to APC, Fayemi declares, with a rider saying denies Amechi link to ADC coalition. All right. Lastly here, Osun APC Adeleke Bika over withheld LG allocations. Those are just a bunch of headlines from the Nigerian News Direct today. We turn to the Daily Courier newspaper for you.
All right, now the Daily Courier and the major headline. The star story there reads, APC stalwarts, ADC leaders push back against defection rumors, regional agenda claims. And we have 3 riders there. It says, Boss Mustafa Fayemi reaffirmed loyalty to APC amid coalition speculations. ADC denies northern bias, says party is for all Nigerians. And the last rider reads, political temperature rises ahead of 2027 election. And it says NDLEA arrests Lagos-based general overseer for cross-border drug trafficking. And you wonder, what is this all about? Obasanjo Library condemns EFCC night raid of its premises, threatens legal action. And that read you will find on page 16. And on page 18, it says police arrest 3 suspected killers of journalists in Abuja after 1 year. I'm glad the law will definitely take its course. Mali arrests 20 soldiers over alleged bid to topple junta. And lastly, on the Daily Courier, it says Crystal Palace beat Liverpool to win Community Shield. And I'm going to get yourself a copy of the Daily Courier to be well informed on issues making round. Next, the Daily Monitor.
All right, so we go right there from the very top of it with a picture of the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, which very soon, with this new legislation coming on board, will become known as the Nigerian Revenue Service. Dr. Zaka Dedeji here reads, FIRS begins e-invoicing electronic fiscal system for large taxpayers. Then we have some more here. Reviewed results. Stakeholders, NOPWIC, demand investigations, sanctions. And then we have a headline here with a picture of the governor of Niger State, Umar Bago. Serap NGE sue Niger governor NBC over Badegi FM. Dangote Refinery begins delivery of CNG trucks for fuel distribution initiative. NDLEA arrests wanted general overseer in Lagos for cross-border drug trafficking. And here comes the big one. Atiku Falana flee NYC over non-release of core members' certificates. We have a few writers accompany that headline. What manner of impunity is this? Ex-VP asks. Decision, a cheap demonstration of overzealousness, according to Falana. Serap urges Tinubu to intervene. Why Uwamaye's service was extended. Management. Maybe we need to step on our brakes for a second and look at this. You know, this young lady was in service. Maybe we should say is in service because she has not formally completed it. Going by the position of the NYC now.
Yes.
She was one that came out and said a couple of things about Nigerian government, about the state of the
yes.
country, the economy.
Yes, she did.
That she had gone to the market, bought things for prices that were astronomically high.
Yes.
As a core member, that was way above her means and things
Budget.
like that. Yeah, and then we understand at that point in time she was suspended, but the NYC also came out and said she was not suspended. So there was this
backlash.
They said they didn't say and things like that. And now her batch or her stream in service just passed out a few days ago. I think it was formally done on Thursday of last week. This is days after that passing out parade, as it's called, and she wasn't part of it. And we even understand that her certificate was suspended. In other words, she has not completed her service. So you now have notable Nigerians reacting to this development, including senior lawyer Femi Falana, saying that this is impunity. Other people are calling it overzealousness.
Yes,
because their reckoning is that this is the NYC authorities trying to play safe, trying to say that we need to punish you for speaking about the country in that manner, for speaking about the president
because you're a core member.
Yeah, and
you're
things like that.
Nigeria.
But again, we wait to see how this unfolds. You see, institutions, public institutions, that is, must have what is called corporate responsibility. They must be able to put the facts out as they are when they should. There's something about timeliness. You know, the Englishman says most times falsehood would have gone around the world before the truth finds its trousers, if you know what I mean. What that means is that rumor or falsehood runs faster than the truths, than facts, which means that we don't wait until speculations have gone viral, people have read things on X, on Facebook, and everywhere else before public institutions come out to speak about these issues. Because this is a bit concerning, given that we know the history between the NYC and this young lady. And now we're saying, we're hearing that a certificate has not been issued to her, even though the other persons who served in that same stream, in that same batch, have all passed out. So it's concerning, and the NYC has a responsibility to address it and put the record straight for Nigerians.
And of course, for me, I think the needful should be done. The NYC will definitely come out and give their own say when it comes to this. And I'm sure, let us hear from her if truly if this actually happened. Let's just see how it plays out. Of course, we'll bring the news, of course, and all the headlines concerning this particular matter. But let's be sure, let's investigate and know what is actually ongoing at this point before we can actually comment and say what it is and what it's not.
All right, let's go ahead now and wrap it up on the Daily Monitor for you, everyone. Here, it says reforms, states now buoyant, governors no longer have excuse for non-performance. That's according to Adeye, because we understand that so much of money is going to the states now on account of the suspension of subsidy payment. The writer says removal of fuel subsidy, equalization of exchange rates saves the economy from collapse. Well, that conversation needs to be narrowed down to the subnational, that's the states and of course the local governments. All right, let's go look at another paper this morning for you. That will be the Leadership newspaper. Juma has those headlines for us.
All right, now the Leadership newspaper. Now above the nameplate of the Leadership newspaper, it says Obasanjo Library threatens legal action after EFCC arrested 93 at hostel. And that is on page 17. Now, soaring energy costs push small businesses towards extinction. Now, we can find that read on page 4, and that is true. Small businesses. Now, we see a lot. Now, let's reflect this to the 93 youths who were arraigned by the EFCC. Now, some youths, there's some who decided on their own to do the needful when it comes to opening up small business, when it comes to individuals who sell their pastries, you know, in that small kiosks, and they have their meat pies, their donuts and all of that, and you do not have lights to bake. Now that's a problem. It keeps them unemployed. It keeps them from funding for themselves. Frustration happens. And like I said, I'm not holding brief for individuals who go into Yahoo, who go into hookups like Mr. Uyi mentioned. But you see, these are the frustrations that accumulate all of these things. When the soaring hike in energy, when it comes to power, when Mr. Uyi doesn't even know whether he's in band A, band B, or band C, and yet he has to pay for electricity. And even when you have to pay for electricity, sometimes it's unstable. And you see things like that, and then of course
you're getting service not commensurate with
I am not getting value for my money, Mr. Uyi. If the hike in electricity is there, and yet I have stable power, and I can actually preserve whatever I have in my refrigerator, I can do what I want with light, and I can regulate it anytime that I want, and you bring up these bills, I will not argue with you, because one, I'm getting value for my money. But once I am not getting value for my money, and you keep increasing. We've not talked about telecom now, that's aside, because there are some people who their businesses rely on calls. They have to, and the hike alone, when it comes to the amount that you need to pay, and you do not get value, it brings frustration, and of course that particular small scale business cannot survive. So that is why we see all of these things. But please, the needful should be done. We keep talking about this. Sometimes it's tiring, but we cannot stop. You know, that's what we're paid to do. We have to talk about it. It's a human angle. And these are the plights of Nigerians, and especially youths out there. These are the plights. Some do not believe in fraudulent means of making wealth. Some will like to develop and do the needful with the work of their hands. Some will want to do it the right way or no way at all. So, but when there are all of these in the pigeon palace boasts, when it comes to high tariff price in electricity, hike in telecom, hike in transportation, how do you expect the person's business to survive? So the next surviving means it what comes at the foot of the table that is glaring, but at the end of it all, we know how this thing plays out. So please let the needful be done. Still on the leadership paper, here it says heavy debt servicing deduction stifling states, and that's from NEITI, and it warns. And the rider reads, says Kaduna, Ogun, Cross River, topmost affected states. And like I mentioned before, I would not be surprised if on Thursday you were here when I said, oh no, was it Friday?
I guess it was Friday.
It was Thursday. I said something about there's a particular state that I would not be surprised if the
flood hits them real hard.
No, I would not be surprised at all.
I'm sure we know what that's the
of course.
Let's keep it in the wraps.
Let's keep it in the wraps. Like I mentioned before, I would not be surprised because I told you my experience there. Now moving on now, it says here, and that's Napton, Ogun, NUT, NANS demand urgent education reform. And that's on page 4. And the Star story reads, FG issues flood alerts to 15 northern states. And that's on page 4. Now, beside all of that, it says Abbas leads presidential committee to mend cracks in Bauchi, APC. And that's on page 24. Dangote Refinery receives CNG trucks for fuel distribution initiative. And that's on page 27. Now, NYSC, Atiku, others disagree over core member service extension. And that's on page 6. Fayemi denies joining ADC, says he remains in APC. And that's on page 19. Now, on the foot of all of that, it says NUC begins review of private varsity regulations, and that read you will find on page 22. Now, those are all the leading headlines on the leadership paper. Please go out and get yourself a copy, and well abreast. Next is the Standard Times.
All right, from the top of it here, it says Dangote Refinery begins delivery of CNG trucks for fuel distribution initiative. The big one, you lied. I did not start opposition coalition with you. Fayemi denies Amechi's claim. Politicians won't stop now, will they? Serap NGE want courts to stop Niger Governor NBC from intimidating Badegi FM. No helmets, no riding on highways. FRSC warn motorcyclists.
Great.
Mutual Benefits Group grows revenue by 68% to 66.92 billion naira in 2024. And the LEA arrests General Overseer of Mercy Church in Lagos for cross-border drug trafficking. By election, that's a kicker for you. APC will finally nail PDP's coffin in Edo Central Senatorial rerun, says Mayaki. Zamfara, over 100 bandits killed in coordinated Nigerian Air Force air-ground operation. Those details are on page 3. Global Television also brought you that story in the course of our news broadcast yesterday. EFCC arrests 93 suspected internet fraudsters at OOPL, Abeokuta. Those are the headlines you have from the Standard Times. Let's turn to First Daily now.
All right, the First Daily, well, unfortunately, it's the last paper on the newspaper review segment today. And beside the nameplate of First Daily, it reads, Atiku slams NYSC for withholding core member rise discharge certificate. And below that it says, release Namadi Kanu for APC's 2027 votes. Ex-lawmaker urges Tinubu. Tinubu appoints Abbas to lead APC reconciliation in Bauchi. Serap NGE dragged Niger governor to court over Bagedi FM clapdown. Now, the Star story reads, EFCC storms ex-president Obasanjo's hotel, arrests suspected internet fraudsters. Now, that is very indicting, but let's just see what connections, let's just see what it holds. Let's just be sure before any speculations at this point. Now, Amechi wrong. I did not start ADC coalition. That's from Fayemi. He fires back. And it says Kanu governor sacks 2 senior aides over alleged misconduct. Okay. And below all of that, it says Lagos doctors threaten indefinite strike over pay cuts. Okay, now we do not know. We keep going back and forth with health sectors, doctors, midwives, nurses, but let the needful be done. It's very important. Now, that is all on the First Daily newspaper, and all our papers. Go out and get yourself a copy to be well abreast with issues making round. Now, for all the editorial judgments on these papers we've read out, we and I, Global Television has no opinions when it comes to editorial judgment on these papers. All right, now we are going on a very quick break. Let's hear what the weather report is like, and at the same time we'll go into the internet with Ogochukwu Mobna to see what the social buzz has to bring for us this beautiful morning. Stay tuned, do not go anywhere.
Good morning, the Global Morning crew, and good morning to you, my viewers. I am Ogachukwu Mobno. Today we'll be looking at what's buzzing on the internet. The Lagos copper who was denied certificate after 1 year of service. A viral Lagos copper who blasted Nigerian government says NYSC denied her certificate after completing 1 year service. Earlier this year, Koparaye made headlines after a video of her boldly calling out the Nigerian government during her passing out parade went viral on social media. Now, in a fresh update, she has revealed that despite completing her full 1 year service, she never received her NYSC certificate. According to Raye, officials claimed she didn't clear her for April on her scheduled date. However, she insists she was present but was repeatedly told to go to the back by the local government inspector LGI. Eventually, the officials refused to clear her, seized her file, and ordered her to leave. We all know this copper who actually made headlines by calling out the government and also referring to the president as not doing his job and feels like he should resign if he's not capable to do his job. According to some other persons, they're happy about this whole rant. She actually started the rant challenge on social media, which a lot of core members were part of this challenge, and also some other individuals were part of the challenge, which also collided with other challenges that came up, such as end bad governance protests and all of that happened. Well, we'll be taking some comments from social media as regards this topic and know what people are talking about. So the first comment is coming from Godwin. And Godwin says, there must be a reason why the LGI refused to clear her that particular day. And my guess is she didn't go back to the LGI after that particular day to try and do the clearance as well. When you are in someone's office, behave yourself. She isn't telling the full story. And as always, Nigerians are quick to side with whom they feel is the victim without asking proper question. Well, that's Godwin's own opinion. The next comment is coming from Nenny Season, and Nenny says, still trying to understand what happened to the so-called freedom of speech in the constitution of a fundamental human right. Well, that's Nenny's. Really, what happened to freedom of speech? So many times Nigerians will tell you there's freedom of speech, but freedom after speech isn't guaranteed. And I think that's what has happened to Koparaye right now. Well, the last but not the least comment is coming from Rita Berry Desert. And Rita Berry says, this girl was literally the voice that made every copper to be earning 77,000 naira. The people responsible for withholding her certificate may it not be well with you. Well, that is Rita Berry. But I must tell Rita Berry that the government already had it in mind and they already had it in papers to make sure that the 77,000 naira would pay to core members. So I think, okay, might also agree that her complaint and all of that actually pushed the government to make sure that they implement that work faster. So at this point, we are going to be discussing with the Global Morning crew on this conversation, and I also want you to be part of the conversation. So please make use of the social media handles you see right now on the screen. Drop your comments on social media, on YouTube. Drop your comments to Global TV NG and be part of the conversation. I'll be leaving you to the Global Morning crew as we discuss further. Please stay with us.
All right, you're welcome back. And of course, you know, it's Global Morning. Apologies for that mix-up, and of course you are welcome back to Global Morning. And of course I have a very beautiful person on the program with me, and of course she already said she's going to be here on Global Morning, but I'm excited because Ogochukwu Bobnob is going to throw more light on the issue of RIA. Hi Ogochukwu, how are you doing today?
Hi Jumai, I'm very well, thank you.
It's great to have you on the program, Ogochukwu.
Thank you so much, thank you so much.
All right, throw more insights on RIA. What's going on, and why are we still going back and forth on this matter that happened months back, really?
Honestly, at this point, I don't even know what to say about it, because this whole thing actually happened a long time ago.
Okay.
I think March earlier this year,
yes,
when Ria came up on social media to complain about the harsh economic situation in the country. She was actually talking about the government paying core members 33,000. She complained that 33,000 naira is not even enough for transportation to her PPA, according to her, talk less of even feeding and also paying for accommodation, because not all PPA, give accommodation. So persons came up online to actually tell her that NYC has provided a shelter for core members. It's like a corporate lodge. But then again, she went ahead to say that not everyone can actually stay in the corporate lodge, because how many times do NYC, how many times do the government maintain this lodge? So is it even healthy for people to actually live in it? So she is not actually staying in the corporate lodge, and she has to, she stated how much she paid for rent and how much she pays for feeding, how much she pays for transportation to her BPA and all of that. And she started the run challenge on social media that actually went viral, especially on TikTok.
Yes, it did.
Core members started complaining about how much they were being underpaid. Even their PPA don't even get to pay them or tip them anything, and they have to struggle all through 1 year. So she even during her rant, she actually called out the president and said the president was kind of irresponsible. I think that was actually what actually increased the whole tension everywhere.
But do you think the story would have been differently if RIA just concentrated on the hardship of core members and the rant challenge, which went viral, and the core members came out to say, hey, where I am in my own PPA, it's nothing to write home about? Do you think should have just stick to that particular rant challenge and left the president out of it?
To be very honest, I think so. It would have been a different case if she only focused on just making core members live well than calling out the president, because this at this point you can't call your president irresponsible.
No, you cannot.
You cannot say the president isn't doing well. We know that the president, every government kind of have its own lapses. We know the president has different policies that are into place right now, and they are working so hard. The 7,000 naira pay right now that core members are receiving is not just because of the rant challenge.
No,
I must tell you that it has actually been on grant for a long time, and I think implementation might be just because of push from outsiders, but then it's not just because of the rant challenge. So I feel like RIA actually went overboard, if you ask me again, because calling out the president, it just feels like you're not even proud of your president, or you don't even know what's on ground. You don't know the policies that are on ground that are working correctly. So I think that's why she's being punished at this point, just to let you know that you don't disrespect your elders. He's not just a president, he's actually like a father or grandfather to you. So I feel like that's why the punishment is coming out. So it's not really a bad punishment, but I know her pain, serving for 1 year and not getting that certificate. The certificate is like the proof that you actually went to school and you graduated and you've served your country properly.
Yes, you have. And like I said, for as much as you can rant, it's easy, Ogo. I think you can agree with me. We've said it. We've talked on Global Morning how we talked about poor our system when it comes to power, when it comes to transportation, when it comes to fuel, when it comes to high rent. We've ranted, we've spoken about it. But to quote unquote, the number one individual of a country, and you come out boldly and you come out and say he's irresponsible, you might not agree with his policies, you might not agree
Definitely.
with all of the things that he's doing, but keep that all aside and concentrate on what is the problem at that moment. So, but looking at it now, I think it's just a little lesson that she needs to learn from, and at the same time, but let's just like Nigerians, we're very empathetic, we're very forgiving. I think.
But
what do you
then
think?
again, Juma, you know, earlier, even before now, NYSC already told her that they will be extending her stay by 2 months. So it shouldn't be like news that she's not getting her certificate at this point. I know she's expecting it, and she feels like, oh, the NYSC, even if they said it, have the backing of some persons on social media. And also, you know, Showara actually came out to say, okay, I have your back, and I'm going to take you through this part. But now, you know, Showara is not here, and you're being affected. NYSC already made it clear that 2 months extra for insulting.
Yes.
It's more like an insult to the president and also to his policies on ground.
Yes, it is.
It's like a 2 months extra. So she should just bear with. It's a way of disciplining people. If you misbehave, there should be somehow they can discipline you and bring you back to us. So it's not a bad one.
For all of the other corpers who participated in the RAND challenge, if you notice, some of them did not mention the president. They only mentioned the plight at hand.
Definitely.
And if they would have mentioned the president, I am sure they would have been fished out and their stay would have been extended. But because she came out and said in her own words, beginning of quote, he is an irresponsible president, end of quote. That is why she is being punished. So Nigerians need to understand that it's not her action. Her action, it's okay to express your grievances. It's fine. We have done that on this program. Lots of individuals whom we've interviewed have come out to say policies are not working, people are suffering, but we did not direct our plight to the number one person of Nigeria. It doesn't matter whether his policies are working or not, or you feel that you're not in support. Let us do the needful and right thing. And I pray this will be nipped in the bud. And one more thing, Ogo, for the fact that she is aware that her stay will be extended. So what is this whole rant about?
Nigerians, that's where the stubborn part
very emotional.
Very, very emotional.
Yes, we are.
There's so many persons saying, oh, she has served, okay, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, yes, is allowed. But then I think this is where we need to learn how to watch whatever it is we say.
Very important.
I want you to express yourself, but express it politely. Definitely, if you destroy things while expressing yourself, definitely you're extending that situation. It's never going to be solved. So I think we should learn, and this is like a lesson to every other core member and every other person who wants to express themselves, concerning not just this government, even any other government that has to come again after this President Bola Tinubu's administration. Please learn to express yourself well. Use the proper channel to express yourself. Please.
Exactly.
And don't not just feel like we have you. Oh, Nigerians have your back. So you can do whatever.
No.
Right now you're all alone.
Exactly. You're all alone in this, all by yourself. So be very careful. Do not be too emotional. When people are saying stuff, you don't feel as if you have the bigger chest to come out and say, I will come out and say, no. You can express yourself. Like I said, that's the thing about Nigeria. Have you noticed when they come out and they protest, the immediate is done, the needful is done. In fact, you would have even gained more wave if she would have come out to rant, and this rant challenge that went viral, she would have even gotten more edge than what it is now. So let's just be careful. It doesn't even matter. It mustn't be the president. It could be anyone outside all of that. It will. You should learn to be polite and to express your grievances in a very civil manner. It will go a long way. All right, Ogochukwu Mobuna, thank you so much for being a part of Global Morning and giving us more insight on this issue of RIA and all of that. And I'm sure most Nigerians have learned their lessons. Thank you so much. All right, now, Ogo, thank you. All right, now let's quickly go on a very quick break. Global Morning continues shortly. Stay tuned.
In recent years, we've seen, if you like, a barrage of protests in this country, especially those by pensioners. Sometimes they say they are peaceful demonstrations. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is what it is. They're calling for their payments, their pensions to be paid. We've seen pictures, some of them very gory, of these pensioners, men and women who have put their lives, in many cases, on the line, serving this country for decades. But then they wind up, with lives that are far from inspiring, especially for people who otherwise would have taken interests in public service. The last few days in particular have been such that we have even seen, if you like, retired military personnel come on to the ministry, the Federal Ministry of Finance, that is, to also put up such a protest. The good thing, some people would argue, that made the difference with that engagement was that the federal government has now promised all of those issues will be resolved no later than the end of this month. But what are the implications of this sort of culture, this kind of system, for people who would have been interested in serving their fatherland as we know it across different spheres of endeavor? That's the thrust of our conversation on the program this morning. My guest is someone who has a handle on these issues and also has been observing this trend over time. Dr. John Akamiang is a media and strategic communication expert to help us find context and perspective this morning. Doc, thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, great. So let's start from the very foundation. One would have thought, I have an older sister who would say public service is secure job. How secure or otherwise it is now is probably going to be some sort of debate at some point, because we have seen pensioners in that numbers across states, in this case, in some instances, federal retirees, come on to ask for pension. Talk to our viewers about the triggers, the variables that create this sort of culture.
Well, the idea or concept or philosophy, if you like, behind public service is the idea to create the notion of trust, foundational trust. Anybody who goes, even I remember as a kid, what we were told was go to school, graduate, and get yourself a government job.
Right.
Why? Because it offered security. It offered benefits even after you had served. But sadly, the Nigerian public system hasn't evolved. And then to make it even more complicated, it has become fraudulent. So the case of fraud has marred what was once an admired opportunity or platform for any national of the country to say, I want to serve in public service. I want to give a better part of my life to public service. And so what we've seen is the gory side of public service as a result of fraud that has taken over the entire system. What we would have expected is that in close to 40 decades, there should have been an evolution.
You mean 4 decades now?
Yes, 4 decades, I beg your pardon. An evolution of the public service,
right,
which would in turn have, not giving room for what we've seen in recent times. I think the height of it is to see civil servicemen and women protest after having taken the oath to protect the sovereignty and integrity of our great nation, and having put their lives on the line, and then after having served, expecting that that same system should take care of them, and nothing happens. So for most of us who watch, the big question is, what is the value that has been placed on the life of the average Nigerian, whether in public service or even in the private sector? And not until we are able to place some value on the life of a Nigerian, that will in turn affect every facet of our developmental stride. So it's not just about coming out with policies, but if those policies do not have both a direct and indirect impact on the well-being of the very people who keep the system running, then it's the policy is as good as just being on paper.
I think it's not possible, if you ask me, to look at the HDI, that is the Human Development Index, across the world, and then you narrow it down to Nigeria, and not somehow, for obvious reasons, spotlight the quality of life of the average pensioner or retiree in this country, right? Do we blame all of this on politicians, or is it a question of maybe the wage bill overwhelming us? After all, we are a country that is largely dependent on monies from the sale of crude oil.
If we want to play the blame game, then everybody's to be blamed. The retired civil servants, when they were in the system, what did they do to protect their future? It's a big question. We can lay all the blames at the doorstep of politicians, bad leadership. In close to over 6 decades, we've seen the evolution of our democratic, quote unquote, because I belong to the school of thought that continues to question whether we truly practice democracy.
Even as of today?
Even as of today. Because democracy in its definition and in its dynamics suggests that the people come first.
Right.
But that's not what is in the offering. I mean, in the last 25 years or so. So I have continued to suggest that we need to take critical look at what we are offering in the context of democracy and give it another name, because it's obviously not democracy, And then, as far as the leadership is concerned, what quality of leadership have we gotten in the last 25 years of democratic rule? Have we brought leaders who truly have the interest of every facet of the polity? Because these are the core issues, and if leaders are able to address them, we will have little or no issues in terms of the well-being of the average Nigerian civil servant, the well-being of the average Nigerian as well. So these are questions that are begging for answers. So the current crop of Nigerians who are in the public service, what are they doing? What lessons have they learned from their predecessors to say, okay, we do not want to fall into the same cycle? So how do we improve the system? It's very simple. We're in the 21st century. Has the public and civil service become automated? Have we integrated technology, biometrics? Go to the local government. Once one administrative authority comes in, the first thing they tell you is, oh, we want to do what they call it,
verification.
Verification. Why?
Where you're finding all sort of ghost workers.
Exactly. So it tells you that the system itself has been created deliberately on a default to ensure that those things continue to reoccur. But when you have a system that brings to the barest minimum situations of ghost workers, unverified staff, so you will be able, at every point in time, one, to control the number of people in the service. Two, you will also be able to authenticate the quality and value your workforce bring into the system. And then three, you are guaranteed security, because you can clearly see the progression or retrogression, as the case may be, and be able to quickly identify where the trouble spots are and prefer workable solutions. But we have continued to politicize the entire process in the name of quota system. One will expect that in over 60 years of our existence, we will revisit some of these policies and administrative instruments that we were instituted way back in the 60s and 70s.
Colonial days and
exactly.
Even afterwards.
Because this is the 21st century. What worked some 40 years ago, obviously, will not be able to deliver the kind of results we expect in today's digital world. So technology is a key facet. How much has the current administration and even past administrations invested in ICT literacy, bringing the civil service up to speed, digitalizing. You hear, oh, no paper policy and all of those things. You go into most ministries, a lot of the work, if any work is done at all, is done manually.
Okay, so that brings I mean, you have mentioned technology extensively, for example. This is 25 years into a new millennium, and the conversation should have changed radically between the 70s up till today.
Exactly.
We've seen government talk about the IPPIS, the integrated payment system, and all of that, which again became basis for the back and forth between academic staff union of universities and the government the other time. Maybe that's not far-reaching enough. But what more should we be doing to help drive innovation in such a way that pensioners can go to bed with two eyes closed?
You must encourage creativity, create an environment of inclusion that allows for people in the civil service to be able to contribute to policies that will affect them, both in service and when they leave service. And that, in a way, will help to create that inclusive, people-centric approach to dealing with most of these issues. Because if you check, as good intentioned some of these policies may be, the problem is that most of them are static. And the key players, key stakeholders are not necessarily carried along. So you find out that at the end of the day, yes, the policy. And then on top of that, if you check, one of the major challenges that we face as a people and as a nation is the failed policy implementation. Who implements the policy? Who follows up? Who evaluates and re-evaluates the policy implementation at the various stages? And then who is responsible for going back to say, okay, this policy was implemented a year ago, 2 years ago. This is how far-reaching it has affected the lives of people in public service, and these are the findings. This is the feedback. And one of the basic challenges that we face as a nation and as a people is that we do not deliberately invest in data feedback, which is the major feedback mechanism, because that data will tell us how well we're doing, how well the policy is doing, whether it has a positive or negative impact on the people that the policy has been directed to, and also whether those saddled with the responsibility of implementing those policies are doing a good job of it.
Just a while ago, before we hit a break now, you were going to talk about whether or not these pensioners, as they now are, were proactive and futuristic enough while they were in active service about their future, because they've got to take their future, take the bull by horns, as they say. But would the systemic problems, evidence in our country allow them to do that, quite frankly?
The systemic problems, sadly, would always be there. Even in the most developed climes, they have their internal issues. But the idea is to work at them progressively, with a hope to bringing those challenges and issues to the barest minimum. So, let's look at today's civil service. Walk into any ministry, parastatal or government agency, over 75% of the workforce are redundant. There is no deliberacy. There is no plan as to each individual department or unit understanding what their daily, weekly, monthly responsibility is in ensuring that the machinery of government and governance works. So the mentality, which is the primary point where we have to start from, has to change. Government has to invest in training, retraining, orientation and reorientation of the public workforce and the civil service. Until that becomes an integral part of the oil that lubricates the system. Right. The entire system in itself will implode.
So, can we attribute all of this to the bureaucracy, the tapism associated with government system? Because I've heard people right from when I was a young boy talk about redundancy in the civil service.
Yes.
Are there bottlenecks that need to be cleared?
Obviously, there are. So the question is, for those who have been, also as a kid growing up, we used to hear phrases like career civil servants,
Right.
who are supposedly the technocrats within the civil service. Where are they? What are they doing? Do they not see these lapses and bottlenecks? What solutions are they preferring? Because that's why they are career civil servants. They are there to, deal with the issues. So, is it that over the years there has been a deliberate attempt not to create an avenue, a conveyor belt that continues to throw up these career civil servants who are supposedly technocrats within the civil service? I mean, if these guys are non-existent, it means that over the last 4 decades, there has been a neglect to think of what is the future of Nigeria's public and civil service going to be like in that means there was no futuristic thinking at different levels, and that in itself is maybe the cancer that is eating up the Nigerian civil service, and that's why we're seeing pensioners, retirees, almost on a daily basis, sitting in front of government houses, ministries and parastatals, asking for their pensions and gratuities to be paid.
And now that you suspect cancer, to use a word, maybe it's time, it's high time we started some diagnosis, all right? There are people who believe, a school of thought that vehemently believes that what we're seeing today is a manifestation of the damage that had been done by military interregnum time and again. Is there any truth in that?
I think we need to outgrow that mindset. Personally, I belong to the school of thought that suggests that the political class have continued to sell that story, that narrative, that, blame it on the military. But if we go back through the annals of history,
right,
we will find that the military era, though tough, though it had its dark side, was far better than what we have today. There was organization, there was purpose, there was discipline, there was focus. Anywhere in the world, they will tell you the military is one of the most organized organizations you can find. So yes, okay, simple question. What was the economy like? What was the value of the naira under military administration? How much were we buying petrol? What was our economic, strength like during, as compared to where we are today? Who have continued to dig us in a hole? Is it the military or or the politicians who currently say they are running a democratic system? These are realities that face us on a daily. So it's easy to always point fingers, but like our elders say here in Africa, when you point one finger, you forget that the other 4 are pointing back at you.
All right, so we'll point this conversation in a different direction in a bit, everyone. We're taking a quick break now. When we return, we'll look at a bit of more, if you like, debilitating concerns within the civil service, the phenomenon known as ghost pensioners, for example. Where did that come from in the first instance? All of that and more unfolding behind this short break. Please do stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us, everyone. So, Doc, let's put this in front of you real quick. So, there's the thinking that since we returned to this Fourth Republic, some people say it's a nonsense democracy, it is almost impossible for a new governor, end to end in this country, to come into office and not talk about ghost pensioners. So you're wondering, how do they come into the books? How do they come into the payroll? How do they come into the payment system of the government that ordinarily should have all the guardrails in place, for instance? Do you see complicity in this regard on the part of career civil servants?
It's a hydra-headed problem. Yes, there is, to some degree, some level of complacency on the part of the career civil servants. But majorly, as I said earlier, we're in a country where everything is political or politicized, and deliberately at that. We have a situation where, one, you have politicians who don't understand, one, how the civil service works. The civil service is a structured system. And so when they come into office, naturally what you expect is for them to sit down with the permanent secretaries, directors, and try to understand how the system works. It is in that process they will be able to identify where the leakages are, and also be able to come up with workable solutions as to how to fix, not mend, or patch, fix those leakages. But what we have seen is that if I'm governor of my state, I have the legitimate right to employ people. In the closing stages of my administration, I could decide to load the workforce with an extra 1,000 to 10,000 employees. After all, it's not going to be my burden to carry. My successor.
You're going to pass it on.
Yes, I'm going to pass it on. And then the question is, at that time, even though I'm giving people employment, have I, during my 4-year, 8-year tenure, did I create a lucrative administration that has left enough in the coffers to cover this new load I am offloading on the government's payroll? Have I also put in place structures to ensure that those parastatals, agencies, and the ministries that are now going to take on this workload are prepared to know where to direct these new intakes? What value are they going to add to the civil service? What would be the profit for government and governance? So that should naturally be both the legacy and inheritance that my successor should inherit happily. But when the successor comes, he meets little or nothing in the coffers of government, and then he sees the wage bill. Naturally, because of our orientation in this part of the world, the next thing to do is to cut down on the workforce, and that's what has given birth to that notion of ghost workers. The question is, how did they become ghost workers? Did they not apply? Did they not go through the stipulated process of getting into the civil service? Because that falls squarely on the table of the Civil Service Commission of the state or of the federation. How? Because they are saddled with the responsibility of determining how people come into the system. So that's why I said the first step is to sit down with the people who run the system and say, ladies and gentlemen, where are we? How did we get to where we are? Where are the loopholes? From your standpoint, how do you suggest that we deal with this? So as a governor, I will now sit down and say, okay, we need to increase the IGR of the state. We need to look at areas that will create, revenue for the state. What are the things that we can further invest in to ensure that our state now becomes a go-to place to get this resource, whether it is natural, whether it is human, whether it is technological. And so, and in fact, that should even have been done before you enter office. You would have done all that groundwork, so that by the time you're sitting with the team, you're getting insider information that you probably already have to a certain degree, but now it's about hitting the ground running. So I've witnessed. I remember about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was in Abia State, and I witnessed when the current administration, Governor Oti, came into office, and the first thing was, so much ghost workers. And then these guys started protesting and, saying, look, we came into the civil service legitimately. We have appointment letters. We went through the system. So how is it that all of a sudden
we have become
ghost workers? And by the time you dig deeper, you find out that, as I said, the system has been so politicized and polarized. And so, in a bid to score cheap political points and to be seen that some sort of restructuring, as we use that phrase today, is ongoing. But in the truth, if we take a clear assessment, and that's one of the things I give to the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he says it clearly, and I agree with him. As the president, he has done his job by ensuring that, one, the states don't borrow as much as they were borrowing during the Buhari administration. So they are taking home more money. So the question is, what are you doing with the money?
The extra money.
Exactly. Where are you putting it? What investments are you doing in your state? How are you opening up the investment opportunities in your state? What is the welfare status of civil servants in your state? And that is why I agree with Mr. President that rather than everybody focusing on the presidency and the center, as we like to call it, we should now begin to ask the governors for accountability and transparency. They need to begin to tell us where those monies are going. We need to be able to see a structured system that tells us where every kobo and naira is spent. And then we now, again, goes back to what I said in terms of investing in data. We now begin to take stock of the capital human index in each of those states and begin to do a veritable comparison. And say, okay, this is why Abia State seems to be doing better than Enugu. And this is why Sokoto is doing better than Kano. So not until, and those are the conversations that truly will drive development at all levels.
Just to wrap it up, I mean, in 1 minute, we keep talking about reforms in the civil service. I mean, we have seen successive administrations talk about that, right from the days of former President Olusegun Obasanjo up to today. 2+ decades accounting. What should be our approach towards reforms within the civil service going forward?
I would suggest continuity, deliberate continuity. The trend we have is that when one administration comes, it puts in place a certain system or a certain structure. When the next one comes, they just completely, toss it off the table and put their own. So there's no continuity. And that in itself has created the various lacunas we have in the system. So continuity is key. Deliberacy. I mean, we're good at mirroring the Western Hemisphere. We talk about America and the UK. This secret to how they have achieved the level of growth and development we witness is simple. There's continuity. Regardless of whether today's government is an APC government and the next one that comes is CDY, once you get there, there's a plan. You continue from where your predecessor stopped. You identify the challenges that your predecessor faced and why those challenges reared their heads, and then come with workable solutions to ensure that in the 4 years or 6 years or 8 years that you're there, you are able to take it a step further. So your legacy should be, I left it better than I met it. And so until we have that forward-thinking, true progressive approach to dealing with the civil service, the public service, government and governance, we will continue to, I'm sorry to say, waddle in this puddle.
You have been able to help us move the conversation from point A to point B. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Dr. John Okamiang, for taking out the time this morning to help us put this conversation into context. We appreciate that.
My pleasure.
This is what we're leaving the conversation, everyone, this morning. I've been talking with Dr. John Okamiang. He's a media and strategic communications specialist here helping us to find insights in this ongoing conversation around the welfare of pensioners in Nigeria. When we return shortly, myself and Jumai Manson will draw the curtains on today's edition of the program. Do stay with us. the conversation around pensioners and their welfare will continue for a long time to come.
Yes,
because
it will.
people who have put their lives into public service.
Oh, yes.
So you're not just going to do an instant nodal approach to the discussion, right?
No. Like I said, this is not something that is up for discussion. The needful should be done. Individuals who have put in their lives, their service to humanity at the detriment of, they don't even know what will come next out of it. So for them to beg for their pension, I think it's not something good to write home about. And at about this point, we have to wrap it up on the program Global Morning. Hope you had an amazing time with us when it comes to issues in the social media, newspaper review segment, the AM news, and of course the topic at hand about pensioners, and of course the weather forecast. Thank you all so much for being a part of the program. I am Jumai Manti, and my amazing, fantastic, well-dressed, eyeglass, nice shoes, packet shirt, nice haircut. Another person, Dan, drum roll.
Well, they come with pockets. My name is Zoe Agmofwebe, and Juma and I are grateful for your time with us on the program. Have a great day ahead of you.
Bye-bye.